On a hot Texas evening, lightning bugs can seem like stars that have come down to earth. They dance about like tiny angels who've come to share with us mortals brief, pulsing glances of the one eternal light that lies just beyond every religion. You see, religion is not necessarily a good thing. Like Prometheus's fire, it can shape us or shatter us. Saints and sociopaths quote from the same sacred text. Only religion can produce a Gandhi, but only religion can also produce an Inquisition. Religion has founded orphanages, and religion have sent tens of thousands of children to die in a pointless crusade. Some say that religion is like a two-edged sword humanity cannot lay down. This is the story of a family almost torn apart by religion. After decades of rocky relationships, they've come together at a cabin just outside of Marfa, Texas. They've come for a weekend of playing guitar and singing like they used to do in the old times. They have one rule. Nobody talks about religion.
Bravo, bravo. Venerable Texas Buddha, I am the humble Reverend Clovis Jones, Pontifical Head of Staff at First Presbyterian Church of Muleshoe, Texas. And this is my beautiful daughter, the heathen, Amy Lynn Jones. We've come as humble supplicants to join your strange and dangerous Eastern cult for 2 days.
I see. Well, did you bring your tithes and offerings to the all-compassionate and the all-compassionate and all-imbibing Texas Buddha?
We did.
Okay, well, then, my beloved children, you may enter my strange and dangerous Eastern cult.
Look, Daddy, Uncle TB still has that little trunk with all our family memories.
Well, it sure is.
Oh, there's my baton from when I was a majorette for the Cuero Gobblers.
Worst name ever for a football team.
Hutto Hippos is pretty close.
That's true.
You have to have a sense of humor to live in Texas. Oh, look, it's my diary. I thought I threw it away.
Actually, you did, Amy. I fished it out of the trash and stored it in the Jones family treasure chest of memories.
Oh, I always loved that statue of the 3 monkeys you brought back from India. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Why do you always keep it on top?
It's a reminder of when I was in seminary.
Before he was kicked out.
Yes, before I was kicked out. Professor Will Spong said that before we enter the pulpit, we should always ask 3 questions. Who says? In other words, upon what authority do we base our claims? And second, who knows? Do you have any real proof of what you're talking about? And thirdly, and most devastatingly, we should ask, who cares? What possible difference is your sermon going to make to somebody sitting in the pews? Now, I didn't go into preaching, but it's pretty good advice for any religious claims.
I knew this was going to happen. I call a foul. The rule is we're here to sing songs and drink beer. No one, enlightened or otherwise, is to mention religion.
Uncle TB, do you remember that Pipe and Pirate song?
I think I do. Let's see. On the lip of an ocean, a pipe and pirate lay. The shadow of a feather of a parrot flown away. In caves of alabaster, the treasure hid for good. For a map went undetected, in his rotten leg of wood. It makes me wonder inside if our lives are make-believe. Why do we cry? There's a turtle in a cannon, and he makes his voice be heard. Between the sips of lotus tea, he finds new use for words. We are wind and wave and shadow of a pirate's dream, I fear. We must learn to love the silence, for that is all we hear. It makes me wonder inside if our lives are make-believe. What's left to die?
I like that song. Is it about Eastern religion?
Excuse me, last time I checked, Eastern religion still falls under the general category of religion, so we can't talk about it.
Okay, no talking about religion. But can I just say this one
By
thing?
the cloven hooves of Beelzebub. I think I'm going to need a beer. All right, my loins are sufficiently girded. What's the one thing you want to say?
I think my drift from the one true religion of Presbyterianism and into the moral abyss of godless secular humanism was because of Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. I'm so relieved all these years I blame myself.
Well, it was your fault too, but primarily I blame Santa.
Okay.
You might want to cut Santa some slack. I mean, he's probably had a lot on his mind, what with the polar ice caps melting and everything.
Yeah, well, I was Santa's last defender at my school. When other kids began to deny he existed, I stood as a flint-faced prophet, proclaiming that the old elf not only existed, but cared for each of us. Us, meaning, of course, those who had been nice and not naughty. With the precision of Aristotle, I reasoned that anyone who questioned the existence of Santa Claus might as well question the Easter Bunny or even the Tooth Fairy herself. It was, I concluded, a slippery slope.
Ah, the slippery slope argument. It works every time.
Except this time it didn't work. The laughter of the Yuletide infidels rang in my ears. When my father, who shall not be named, finally gave me the talk, I was crushed. It was humiliating to discover that I had made a fool out of myself in front of my whole school by mindlessly repeating what I had been taught. Not to mention the cookies and milk I wasted on the old coot.
Well, if you ate Santa so much, can I have those presents back? By the way, thanks for the milk and cookies.
Man, that's cold, Clovis.
Late at night, I would lie awake and brood philosophy. If my father, whoever that might be, if he was misleading me about Santa, what else in his teachings might be untrue? It seems so foolish now, but at the time it was really painful. I decided I had to question everything I'd been taught.
By the hemorrhoids of Judas, Amy. Why didn't you just tell me that at the time?
Daddy, please just swear. That sounds really stupid when you swear by indirection. And I didn't tell you because I didn't need to. I took it all out on my Sunday school teachers. I could tell they didn't know any more than I did. I could see it in their eyes and that they were bluffing. So I'd pepper them with questions. Can God make a rock so big that even God can't pick it up? In the Garden of Eden, why didn't God make the snake forbidden so Adam and Eve would have eaten it instead of the apple?
First of all, that was Mark Twain's line. And second of all, why don't we stop discussing religions like we agreed and sing a song? That's why we came here.
How did Noah keep the animals from eating each other? Did he refrigerate the polar bears? They were the questions most Sunday school kids ask at one time or another. My teachers would give me a condescending smile that I came to know quite well. They would pat my knee and say, "Amy, you just have to have faith." But if I kept asking questions, the all-knowing smile would inevitably melt into a look of fear that I also came to know quite well. On several occasions, I was put in timeout for making my Sunday school teacher cry. Secretly, I was praying that somebody, somewhere, would refute my questions and end my doubt. I was a gunslinger hoping to lose. But as one teacher after another bit the dust, it became clear that if I wanted to be honest about life, I might have to go outside the church to do it.
Jezebel's teeth.
So anyway, would you like to hear a song I wrote at that time?
Is it religious?
No.
What's it called?
It's called Why Does the Preacher Man Have to Lie?
Oh. By the prostate of St. Anthony.
Daddy, please, at least say dang.
Okay. Sing your dang song.
I'd be happy to. Why does the preacher man have to lie? Why does the preacher man have to lie? He says he loves the people, but sits around and makes them cry. He say he loves the poor folk, but that man's insane. He say he loved the poor folk, but that's insane. How can he love the poor folk when he leaves them sleeping in the rain? He says he loves the women, but that man's insane. He says he loves the women, but that's insane. He only loves the women as long as they'll stay in chains. Why does the preacher man have to lie? Why does the preacher man have to lie? He says he loves the people, but sits around and makes them cry. He says he loves the sinners, but that man's insane. He says he loves the sinners, but that's insane. How can he love the sinners when he's taking their names in vain? All right, everybody now, come on, join me. Why does the preacher man have to lie?
Why does he lie?
Why does the preacher man have to lie?
Why?
He says he loves the people, but sits around and makes them cry.
That was a happy little song. Now, may I say one thing about religion in my own defense?
Now, Daddy, rules are rules. No talking about religion.
Madam Chair, I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Muleshoe.
The gentle chair lady yields to the gentleman from Muleshoe.
Look, Amy, I know you think all religion's false, but sometimes you have to meet people where they are. For me, religion is stopping when babies are born to pledge ourselves to help them as they grow. It's stopping when a young couple gets married to let them know they're not in it alone. It's stopping when people die to assure their grieving family that their loved one won't be forgotten.
Well, that part makes sense, but people don't need to be babied.
You have to meet them where they are. Let me tell you a story. When I was in seminary, as part of my training for the ministry, I spent one summer as a hospital chaplain. One day I entered the room of a man who had been tied to his bed. His ancient arms were bruised and blotched. He was twisting miserably in the bed, moaning repeatedly, "I've got worms in my teeth." The nurse had been trying to assure him for quite some time that he had no worms in his teeth. She breathed a sigh of relief when I arrived. Surely the man would believe a chaplain. I know. I'd only been in the room a few seconds before the nurse began her cowardly retreat out the door, leaving me, a student, helplessly alone with the howling man. His deep-set eyes locked on mine. He moaned, "I've got worms in my teeth." I put my right hand on his. I examined his teeth, assured him that there were no worms in his mouth. He studied me for a moment. A look of bitter betrayal swept across his face. The poor man began to wail. I felt completely powerless.
What did you do?
Well, I did what any professional would do. I panicked. I didn't even notice that a hospital orderly had entered the room and had begun to prepare a nearby bed. As soon as he heard the man's cries, he leaned over the bed and said, "What seems to be the problem here?" Hope returned to the man's face. "I've got worms in my teeth." The old orderly looked over his bifocals knowingly. "Yes, I see what you're talking about, but don't bother them. They're actually quite helpful." The orderly straightened a pillow and was gone. And in a few minutes, the old man was peacefully asleep.
That's amazing.
The old orderly probably wasn't in the room more than 2 minutes, but he taught me more about truth than 3 years of seminary. That old patient was trying to make sense of the tingling sensations in his mouth. He was terrified. When me and the nurses told him his mouth was empty, we were denying the only experience he knew. We were making his fear worse. What the man needed was for someone to start where he was, to come into his nightmare, and translate his sensations into a meaningful framework where he could find his way out of the labyrinth. By insisting on my own worldview, I was uselessly accurate. By not quibbling over the man's worldview, the orderly could help the man find his way back to sanity.
But how do you know religion isn't just made up? Even if it makes us feel better, that doesn't make it true. Sooner or later, we have to deal with the real world. Religious creeds don't help us deal with the real world.
Amy, the man was dying. The only option was whether he was going to die in terror or in peace. What does truth mean at a time like that?
For a moment, forget what you have learned and heard religion to be. Forget about stained glass windows. Forget denominations, creeds, and hymns. Forget theism and atheism. Forget all things we humans fight over. Think back to a time when you felt at one with all that is. Perhaps you were in a boat at night. The stars shine brightly above you and danced wildly in the water below you. In the distance, you heard the voices of strangers. But to you, it sounded like you were hearing long-lost brothers and sisters. Those moments of euphoric unity, they are what religion could and should be. Perhaps the believer and the non-believer are able to meet at that mystery.
Listen to this passage from my diary. I feel so lost. I just don't know where to turn. My father says there's a God, but I can't believe it. Why would God hide from us? Why would God make us beg? I try not to think about it, but I have this restlessness. I have no idea where to begin searching. I don't even know what I'm searching for, but I can't get rid of this longing. What should I do? Uncle TB says I'm like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. It too feels a terrible and wonderful longing. He says caterpillars don't need to find teachers in order to become a butterfly. They only need to give birth to something written in their nature. I'm tired of looking for God. I'm tired of talking to thin air. I still feel that way. What did you mean, Uncle TB?
Well, I think what I was trying to say is whatever we mean by the word God is not something we have to find. What we're looking for is whatever that is that gave us birth. It's not outside of us to be found. God is just a symbol of all those connections. I think I was saying, trust your questions, Amy. They're like your homing beacon back to your source.
You know, I'll miss you both in heaven. But I guess that just means more beer for me. You know, Tom, I used to think you were crazy. I think that's why I started calling you Texas Buddha. I knew you weren't really a Buddhist, but you sure the heck weren't like anything we were taught in Sunday school. Most Americans have never read one page of scriptures of another faith. You seem like you knew them all.
But why were you kicked out of seminary, Uncle TB?
Well, it's a long story.
Yeah. For one thing, they all thought he was a heretic. I just thought he was drunk. I even wrote a poem about it that TB put to music.
Ah, yes, the Buddha beer song.
The Buddha beer song.
I think I remember. Want to give it a try? If you find yourself just walking down the road and the world seems like one big cosmic commode, never, never fear. Buddha's always near. He's in your beer.
If you ask for bread and God gives you a stone. If you find yourself just sleeping all alone.
Shante, Shante, Om. He's there in the phone. He's in your beer. He's in your beer. Fades out right from there.
Fades out.
That's kind of mean, Daddy.
And why does the preacher man have to lie isn't mean at all.
Well, you always say if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. I figured Buddha would like that song too. He isn't like some religious figures I know who get their panties in a wad whenever somebody makes a joke about them.
Later that night, as Amy tried to go to sleep, she heard her Uncle TB and Clovis arguing again. Amy had stopped coming to the Wednesday night Bible lessons and instead had started working at a local soup kitchen. Her father was terrified.
I'm happy that Amy wants to help people. She used to be so good at memorizing Bible verses. I'm afraid she's thinking she can be saved by good works.
Clovis, Amy's a good person. She's doing what you taught her to do. You should be proud of her.
But what if she quits studying the Bible altogether?
Clovis, she's left the Bible study. Maybe forever. But you should still be proud of her. You know, when you feed your cattle, you don't want them to prove they've eaten by throwing up the grass. You wanted to take them in and turn it into milk and to wool and fur and their own growth.
You stole that from a Stoic philosopher, didn't you?
Actually, I did, yes. But my point, Clovis, is that Amy hadn't left your teachings. She's fulfilled them. An acorn doesn't look anything like the oak. And a teaching can be very different than the practice. You taught her Bible verses, which were the acorns, but she's given you a life of love. And that's the mature oak.
I just feel like I'm losing her. I've lost her. I want her to be open-minded, I really do. I want her to learn about the wonderful world science talks about.
But
I worry about her. I know this sounds crazy to you, but Jesus did say that he was the only way. I don't believe that she's going to hell or anything, but why would Jesus say that if it weren't true?
Clovis, is it possible that Jesus was talking about something bigger than the Presbyterian Church?
Like what?
Clovis, have you ever seen a Russian nesting doll?
No offense, brother, but these lessons get real old.
Hang with me here, Clove. A nesting doll, a Russian nesting doll, is one doll with successively smaller dolls inside it. There can be as many as 10 of the dolls nesting inside one big one. Now, when Jesus says he's the only way, there are two different ways we might understand him. He might be saying he's like the smallest doll, which excludes all the others, so we have to reject other religions to choose him. Or he may be saying he's like the largest doll, which includes all the others. Perhaps he's saying that only a religion of universal love will save the world.
Let's do another fun song and then go to bed. Let's do the Chihuahua song.
The Chihuahua song.
Well, I wrote this to be the saddest song of all time.
Yeah, well.
I'm just a little cute Chihuahua, but I can't help but weep. They're taking me to a kennel, gonna put my little ass to sleep. You know I'm gonna yap tonight. Yap, 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 yeah, 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 yeah.
I can't help it if I'm little. I can't help being cute. I know they're trying to get me. Keep finding chicken bones in my food. You know I'm gonna shake tonight.
Yep, 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 yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, I tried to be his watchdog, always slept up on his bed. But when he sends me to puppy heaven, I'm gonna pee on his head. You know I'm gonna yap tonight. Yep, 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 yeah.
Well,
I'm just a little cute Chihuahua,
but
I can't help but weep.
but
Taking me to a kennel, gonna put my little ass to sleep. You know I'm gonna yap tonight.
Yap, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna yap tonight. Let's go to bed now so we can be fresh in the morning.
I love you both.
I love you too, brother.
Most of us begin life with the religion of our parents. Just as we are born into the love of our family, so we are born into their understanding as well. It's inevitable that we should be born into some such pre-existing nest, and that we should begin to see with a borrowed light. As we get older, we face an inevitable crossroads. As our eyes begin to see for themselves, the torch given us in youth begins to flicker and dim. At some point, we realize that the religion our parents gave us now produces more smoke than light. The growing darkness we feel is not a problem with our parents' teaching, but a result of the fact that we cannot see through borrowed eyes or feel with another's skin. Such times of passage can feel like the death of everything we have known and trusted. When a chick breaks through its shell, it's both setting out on its life journey and also destroying everything it has ever known. At this point, it must choose between the urge to fly and the urge to return to its nest of origin. Religion gives us its symbols of the exquisite pain of leaving our nests. It tells us stories about the inevitable death and rebirth that true living requires of us. The dying God symbolizes the painful letting go of the mimicked song we learned as children, and embracing the song of nature pulsing within our own heart. The dying Savior asks of us whether we will spend our days trying to restore the shattered shell of our past or find our home in the trackless sky. As a preacher's kid, Amy Lynn Jones always felt she had been born into a life that wasn't completely her own. Before she could even speak, she had been the Christ child in the church's nativity scene. Before she was even out of the nursery, she'd been the humorous example in many a sermon. Amy loved her father dearly, but sometimes her mind felt like a caged bird in the little world that was acceptable to him. Her mind could flutter, but never fly free. Reverend Clovis Jones loved Amy with all his heart and had dreams that someday she would be a preacher's wife like her mother. But Amy Lynn Jones had dreams of her own, and none of them included being a helpmeet. It was her uncle, Texas Buddha, who was the first to hear her own restless voice, and also the first to help her hear it, too.
Morning, Angel. How'd you sleep? I feel bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
I stayed up too late.
Huh?
Uncle TB left my old diary on the bed.
Just thought it might be helpful to remember some things.
I can't believe I was so morbid when I was younger. Listen to this. My grandparents are morticians in Burke Burnett, Texas. Granddaddy embalms the bodies and Nana does her hair and makeup. Whenever my parents take us to visit the funeral home, we sleep in the living quarters on the second floor. Retrieving forgotten pajamas from the car means walking down a long hallway of dimly lit bodies. I set my eyes at a distant point so that I won't be tempted to turn and look at the bodies as I pass, but I always do. It's funny. I can't remember one sermon my grandfather preached at his church in Burkburnett, and if I still close my eyes, I can still clearly picture the long hallway with shadow.
Amy, I had no idea. No wonder you were so withdrawn.
To the casual observer, a corpse looks like someone who happened to fall asleep in a burning box with all their clothes on. Behind the sideline is a different story. Inside the casket, the clothes are cut out in back to make their bodies easier to dress. The mortician did not waste time with unobservable details like shoes and socks. The green tint of formaldehyde is mitigated by a putty-like makeup. Inevitably, the jowls of an older person would stretch them out, leaving a disturbing cover underneath fish skin. When Mommy died, my father said he was happy she was Jesus. And then, inexplicably, he would burst into tears. That she was in a better place. That God never gives us more than we can carry. That's what he did. Losing my mother was better.
I guess I just didn't know fully what you were going through.
The showing of her body, you kneel down and listen saying, Mom looks so natural, she looks like she was asleep. You lifted me up and immediately over the casket so I could kiss on your body. Horrified to see towering, slightly colored face with black eating lips. Mommy looked like a wax candle. Her hair looked like a wicker basket, and her dress was ill-fitting and uncomfortable. The gentle hands that stroked my hair so many times were flat, like karate chops. She was so still, so motionless. The big stroke of her head, like she was moving. That's how you would have this superficial. And I realized
Amy, I'm so sorry.
Why don't I play a song? Silk and silver baby spoon, digging craters on the backside of the moon. It's your time to sing a tune. It's your night at noon. Cratered by some strange event, a lover couldn't pay the rent. No one saw which way he went. It was night at noon. Silk and silver baby spoon, digging craters on the backside of the moon. It's your time to sing a tune. It's your night at noon.
Did you write that at the funeral home?
Yes, I did, Clovis. Amy, are you okay?
TV. Do you remember when our family jerky favorite wedge was little head in Bell?
He stuck his head in the bell?
It was the strangest thing. I named him Davy after Davy Crockett, who was my first imaginary boyfriend. One morning I awoke to find Davy Crockett lying motionlessly on the bottom of his cage with what looked like a green Nazi helmet pushed down over his face. When I removed the bell, Davy's head was absurdly cocked to the side in a permanent vaudevillian double take. It was the face of death without makeup.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because of our time at the funeral home, I thought I knew exactly what to do. I lined a cigar box with tissue, my friends played the mourners, and I performed a solemn ceremony, laying Davy Crockett to eternal rest under the swing set in our backyard. It was my first and last sermon.
Well, we can laugh about it now, but it was a terrible scene. Our family dog dug the bird up within hours. While Amy was holding her peanut butter sandwich in her little hands, she looked out the window in horror to see our beloved Cocker Spaniel running around the backyard with Davy Crockett in his mouth.
It became a family joke, but not for me. The desecration of that grave made a cruel mockery of the very idea of anything sacred. I did what Daddy said religious people are supposed to do. I organized a solemn ceremony with prayers and scripture. But then reality showed up as a big dog wagging its tail, digging up our consecrated ground and using our hallowed dead as a chew toy. After that incident, every time Daddy said, "Consider the birds of the air," in one of his sermons, I was thinking of poor Davy Crockett with his little head cocked to the side as if to say, "What the hell?"
Well, when I was young and I heard sermons about the birds of the field, birds of the air, I thought about a field behind our house. Across the alley from our backyard was an untended field with weeds as tall as I was. In the field, dead birds lay undisguised and, as far as I could tell, unmourned. Mothers fed their birds. Mother birds fed their young within the visual range of the ant-covered remains of delayed Uncle Chirpy. No one seemed to lose their appetite knowing that someday they would be on the same menu. Animals know only life. What we call death, they call food.
Speaking of food, anyone like some chicken salad?
Clovis, you always had great timing. No, thank you. Anyway, Amy, I felt the same way you did when I saw corpses at the funeral home all made up. I also thought that religion might be nothing more than lipstick on a corpse, but for some reason I was eased by the naked face of life and death in the field. At the time, the field didn't seem like a religious place, but looking back, it may have provided the core metaphor for life for me. The field stood like a miniature replica of the world and of that mysterious primordial background out of which we all come and into which we return. Like the voice in the biblical book of Job, it didn't offer so much a human explanation as an elemental context.
Did you pray there?
No, it didn't feel like an invisible person was watching over the field. It felt more elemental than that. It was like there was one life within all of us in the field. It was like we were all aspects of one another. The birth and death of individuals felt like a breathing in and out of the field. I too was but a breath, but this didn't dismay me. And looking at the field, it seemed like there was some play in the cosmic steering wheel. In one sense, the animal's fate seemed completely random, but in a deeper sense, the living unity lifted us all beyond the brutality of chance. At some level, I knew I was losing faith in what I'd been taught and finding it again in something I was experiencing in that field.
But how would you share a faith like that?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure you really can share a mystical experience. I agree we need rituals and symbols at least to share those experiences. But I think of religion as the lantern, not the light.
A lantern, but not the light.
And Amy, I understand your frustration. I felt it too. In seminary, we learned to rephrase every question into a religious terminology that didn't so much answer our question as get us to forget what we were asking in the first place. It's like a magician who makes you forget what's in the right hand with a flourish of the left. In theology class, we focused on John Calvin, Martin Luther, and other great dinosaurs of the faith. I mean, they were brilliant thinkers, and I learned a lot from them, but their answers didn't have anything to do with the questions I was asking. In seminaries, we were taught not to have thoughts of our own, but to remember scriptures and the quotes of theologians and to play them like baseball cards. The longer somebody had been dead, the more their card was worth. Scripture, of course, was always trump. And while we couldn't make their ancient truths live, we learned the embalmer's art of making the great dinosaurs appear as if they might stir at any minute. We were taught to replace the questioning eyes of an honest human being with the sightless marble eyes of a creed. We were taught to replace the warm, pulsing mammalian blood with the calm, green, embalming fluid of a pre-constructed ethic. Our job was not primarily to call people to life. We were embalmers just like Mom and Dad. Our job was to put lipstick on the corpses and say they looked like they were asleep.
How come we always say we're not going to talk about religion and we end up not being able to talk about anything else? Isn't there another song we could sing?
I know. Last night I found this poem that I wrote when Daddy didn't let me wear a dress to school because it was too short.
Uh-oh.
You wrote a tune to it, Uncle TB.
I think I remember that.
Oh, by the swinging corpse of Judas. All right, let's hear another song you two wrote at my expense.
This is sung in the style of Johnny Lee Hooker. Don't talk, that nasty talk. Don't walk, that nasty walk. You're the girl I love. Don't talk that talk. Ho, 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 ho. I've been trying to help you since you was only 3. And all this time you make a monkey out of me. Don't want to live your life. You should live it your own way. But when you dress like that, I just need to say, don't talk that talk. Don't, that's the nasty talk.
Nasty talk.
Don't walk that walk. That nasty walk.
That nasty walk.
You're the girl I love. Don't talk that talk.
Don't talk that.
Don't talk that talk. Don't talk that talk.
Amy, I actually understand what you're saying. I was raised in the funeral home, remember? You can imagine how that went over at my school. My father was a gentleman, but his horrific snoring always conjured images of maniacs with chainsaws just outside my door. Some nights I was sure a corpse was hiding under my bed. Occasionally a second corpse made noises from the closet.
I really appreciated them not waking me up.
Yeah. Well, when I tried to crawl into bed with my parents, my father took the scientific approach. He opened the closet door, lifted up the bedspread, pointed under the bed. See, there's nothing there. Dad didn't seem to realize that zombies always anticipate where adults are going to look. And they change their hiding places. I pretended to be convinced by his demonstration until he fell asleep, and then I crawled back into my parents' bed on my mother's side. Mom would hold me a bit, tell me a story, sometimes from old Southern folk tales, like Pecos Bill, other times from the Bible. It did no good to tell me there weren't corpses under the bed. I was sure I'd heard them. But stories about a clever rabbit tricking a fox or a little kid defeating a giant with a slingshot convinced me that I could face what was under my bed. At some level, I knew there probably wasn't really corpses there, but I really was afraid, and needed to be reassured.
That's why I think all religion is born of fear.
Well, but Amy, the stories can also lead us to our own courage. Mother never told us religious stories to frighten us into being good. We were already afraid when she began the stories. If we asked questions about the fact of the story, Mom just shrugged. Although she wouldn't say it, I could tell our factual questions were missing the point. At some level, I think she knew she wasn't talking about history or science. The stories were like a special code that unlocked the secrets we needed to understand so we could be brave. Religion has done a lot of bad things, but it didn't invent fear as a marketing tool. We were already afraid. The religion we learned from Mom's stories was a call to wisdom and courage, but it was spoken in a way that a frightened child could understand. After the story, we'd go back to bed unafraid, and maybe we could even look under the bed and see there was only dust. I'm really glad my father taught me to be scientific and to test every belief or superstition. But I'm also grateful to my mother for the stories that speak to my deeper being. Today I hear the biblical stories as a call to courage, perhaps because I first heard them wrapped in a blanket and spoken in the raspy voice of a weary parent half asleep.
Perhaps the answer to Amy's question is that healthy religion isn't a need, but an aspiration. Think for a moment of a time when you kicked a vending machine because it kept your money. Did you not for a brief moment believe you were punishing the machine? Where do our childhood terrors go when we grow up? Do they disappear completely, or do they lie inertly in our blood, waiting for a startled moment to reemerge? Where do our nightmares go during the day? Are they non-existent? Or do they inaudibly whisper to us throughout the day? Perhaps religion is not a need, but an art, the art of living. Perhaps religion is the connections we build between the rational and irrational, between our fears and our dreams, between our living and our dying.
Okay, this is our last day. Are you going to tell me how you got kicked out of seminary?
Okay, but let me first sing one song that I wrote while I was in seminary. I think it says it better than I can. Last night I walked the city. I heard them playing pretty songs. They said they were for Jesus. I got a funny feeling they maybe missed the meaning of everything he said. Jesus, Jesus, they sang. Jesus, Jesus, they sang. But they didn't lift a hand. I got a funny feeling they maybe missed the meaning of everything he said. Feed the hungry people, clothe the naked people, and give your heart to love. I got a funny feeling that maybe was the meaning of everything he said. Last night I walked the city. I heard him playing pretty songs. They said they were for Jesus. I got a funny feeling they maybe missed the meaning of everything he said.
In seminary, Tom became convinced that the church had changed Jesus' message of love to one of beliefs and rituals and rules. He said to follow Jesus, he needed to leave the church.
When I was a kid, I used to have nightmares about the Holocaust. At first, my nightmares were about being a Jewish prisoner. But then one night, I dreamt it was a Nazi guard. And I realized that many of Hitler's followers sang the same hymns and repeated the Apostles' Creed every week of their adult lives. But because they saw the creed superstitiously, their actions remained unaffected. Their use of the creeds did not make them better human beings, but simply more obedient soldiers of an empire.
So, how did you end up a political activist?
I tried to stop him. I don't think it's right to mix religion and politics.
But Clovis, you got a great big American flag right by your pulpit. That's not political? You pray for our troops, but not our enemies' troops? Is that not political? Politics is just how we treat people.
So how did you get this way?
Well, when I arrived at college, I decided I would search for truth and make that search the most important thing in my life. Everybody I knew seemed to think they had the one right version of religion. It was like I was at a bus station and all the bus lines were claiming their only way to get to Chicago. You'd only know if you took the bus and then it'd be too late. I decided to make a list of people whose lives I admired. It made sense that good religion should produce good lives. If I could discover what my heroes had in common, then maybe that'd be a starting place for my own journey. I don't remember my whole list. I remember Albert Schweitzer and St. Francis were the people that I believed had lived Christ-like lives. I have to admit my images of Schweitzer and St. Francis were laughably immature. My idea of St. Francis primarily came from the garden statues. I remember the story of St. Francis stripping off his clothes as an act of personal renunciation. I had no idea that his religion of love would demand a radical politics where the rich and powerful renounced their privilege over the weak. I mean, I just wanted the birds to sit on my shoulder like they did on the statues. Albert Schweitzer had been a hero for a long time. I knew that he gave up fame and comfort to be a missionary in Africa. I knew that his philosophy of reverence for life occurred to him watching hippos cross a river. But I had no idea his philosophy of love meant a ruthless purging of mythology and superstition. He just seemed so kindly. I think it was maybe the mustache. Anyway, Schweitzer said there are two kinds of religion that are both called Christianity. He said there's a religion of Jesus, which you find in the Sermon on the Mount. And he said there's the religions about Jesus, which is all the rules and regulations and morality that replace the call to a life of love. I can't remember my list anymore, but I was just shocked to discover they were all politically radical. Gandhi and Martin Luther King called us to civil disobedience. Helen Keller was a socialist. Tolstoy was an anarchist. I eventually discovered that the masters of love were both universal and radical in their politics.
So you're saying I was right. That religion isn't about obeying rules, but taking responsibility.
Yes. When God tells Moses to go to Pharaoh and say, set my people free, that can only mean liberation. And when Jesus says he's come to announce good news to the poor, that can only mean economic justice. And when Paul says in Christ there's neither male nor female, nor Jew nor Greek, nor slave nor free, that has to mean universal human rights. Religion is about love. And as Cornel West says, justice is what love looks like in public.
We are almost out of time. Would you please tell me how you got kicked out of seminary?
All right. It was finals week.
We were all supposed to do a summary of the teachings of John Calvin in front of God and everybody.
You didn't.
He did. He sang a song that he said summarized the teachings of Calvinism. And now from the great state of Texas, it's the Hindenburg of theology. My brother, the Venerable Texas Buddha, crashing and burning out of seminary with his musical summary of Calvinism entitled, Spank Me, Jesus.
Spank me, Jesus. I've been a real bad. Spank me, Jesus. I know I made you sad. You know what to come. You spank my little bun. But until that day, I just want to say, everybody, spank me, Jesus. I've been a real bad. Spank me, Jesus. I know I made you sad. I made you sad.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was painful. It was painful.
I just couldn't take it anymore. So I determined I was only interested in a religion that was true for all people and for all times. I was no longer interested in a God that loved some people and not others, or a truth that worked in some places and not others. If religion is whatever we bet our life on, there's no easy or safe path. But we can't go far wrong if we hold this talisman to serve only that which is fundamentally true and universally helpful.
You know, brother, I don't think we're ever going to agree on religion.
Well, maybe we're not supposed to, Clovis. The Bible says to love with all of our heart, mind, and strength. But who can do all of that? Amy loves with her whole mind, and that has led her honestly to atheism. You've loved with your whole heart, and that has led you to a life of selfless ministry. I've loved with all my strength, and that has led me to a life of political activism. Maybe we're like wounded angels with one wing each, and we can only fly when we hold each other.
Look at all the fireflies. How do they burn so brightly without their little bodies being consumed? When I was a kid, I used to think they were desperately trying to tell me something in Morse code. They're so beautiful.
As human beings, we are born with our eyes closed and our fists tightly clenched. Our bodies form in the womb, compressed into a ball. Throughout life, this is how we feel safest. As children, we escape fearful threats by closing our eyes or pulling the blanket over our head. For some, the name of that impulse born of fear is religion. On the other hand, we human beings also have lifelong urges to blossom and to open ourselves like butterflies and to bring some gift to our brothers and sisters, scattered upon the earth even at the cost of our own lives. To some, the name of that desire born of hope is also religion. On a hot Texas evening, the lightning bugs seem like stars that have come down to earth. What is the message that they are so fervently trying to give us? Could it be that they're calling us to find a depth of love beyond the bickering of all the religions and philosophies, and to join hands in reverence to the one invisible light behind us all?
We are wind and wave and shadow of a pirate's dream I feel. We must learn to live in silence, for that is all we hear. It makes me wonder, inside, if our lives are only make-believe, why don't we fly?